So I want to welcome everybody. I'm Elaine Chapnick, president of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit, welcoming you to our March meeting. It looks like spring is on the way. My flowers are coming out of the ground. They're ready to burst any minute, so we can't wait for spring to finally come. And daylight saving time gives us even more daylight, so we're all very happy. And we're happy for you to be here. Before we start, though, this is an opportunity, since everybody's around this area, this table, to have any community announcements. Does anybody have a community announcement you want to make?
I do.
Nina, I think you do. You know what? Let's use this mic. Hold on.
Oops, let me get this.
I'm going to spill something. Good morning. My name is Nina Resio, and I'm making this announcement on behalf of the STEM Alliance that on March 18th from 6 to 9 at St. Thomas Church, they're having a program called A Taste of Co-op, which is the excellence in summer learning. And it's for the benefit of the co-op. It will run from 6 till 9. The co-op is a program for children in the community during the summer. So if you can come and support, that would really be wonderful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other announcements? Then without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to today's chair, Claudine Hutton.
Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? So? Okay. My name is Claudine Hutton. I'm a board member of the Summit. Thank you all for coming. Today we're here to talk about green spaces and the benefit of recreation for families of all ages, adults, young kids, school-age kids. I think we all learned during the pandemic, as we're 4 years out, how crucial open spaces are to physical health, to mental health. And in a town like ours, we have a lot of people and a lot of active people and a lot of people who really appreciate the beautiful surroundings that we have. So we're here to talk today about the benefits that we receive, which are a lot of them self-evident, but worth discussing again, and also how we think about managing and developing those open spaces in our area. We have a lot of people and a lot of needs, and a lot of thought goes into the process of building these spaces out. So without further ado, I want to welcome three very important people from the nonprofit world who are pivotal in this process. First, I guess, all the way to my right, Todd Norman is a board member for Field for Kids, an organization that advocates and fundraises for high-quality recreational sports spaces in the Larchmont, Mamaroneck area. You want to add any few minutes, 30 seconds of additional background? You guys all have incredible backgrounds.
So I moved to town in 2012 with my wife Amanda and my three kids. I have three children in the community, a junior and a freshman at the high school, one of which is in the room. And I have a seventh grader at Homix. So three kids through the public school system, all three are athletes, love the community. But definitely feel like there is a huge opportunity with our field space and green spaces to give them a better platform to live, thrive, grow, and exercise.
I have Ben Foster immediately to my right. He is the director of coaching for Larchmont Mamaroneck Football Club and founder and head coach of FosterSoccer.
Hi, I've been living in this community and working in this community around 20 years now. Moved over from England and have worked in the soccer world, all my working life, and this has been a huge part of my life, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, and soccer in general, and working with the kids. So I've, backing off on what Todd said, I think the spaces, I see it on a daily basis, the importance of activity, of sports, of organized sports for kids in this community. And I just want to make sure those spaces stay there and make sure that we've got places for the kids to basically play.
Thanks. And then lastly, and not least, Deborah Maher. She is the co-president of the Friends of Larchmont Parks and president of the Randall's Park Alliance.
Hi, everyone. My name's Deborah Maher. You can call me Deb. I live in the village of Larchmont since 2012. I live with my husband and my daughter, who's at Central School. I serve on the nonprofit of Friends of Larchmont Parks, which you might be familiar with because we did a lot of work on Constitution Park right next to the village. And also, we worked on other projects. We're currently working on Willow Project. But for my day job, what I do is work at Randall's Island Park, which is a major park in New York City. It's a public-private nonprofit, and we have a large staff. So while one is a staffed component, we're Randall's Island, we have 80 people working there and operating and maintaining. The other one, more locally, that you're probably more interested in, is very much a volunteer effort, 100% a volunteer board, and raising money to really kind of supplement village funds to try to take care of our green spaces.
Thanks. I think I'd just like to start, sort of laying out what we know. We know it inherently ourselves, but as people who dedicate so much time to this effort, what do we know about the benefits of open spaces as it pertains to our physical and our emotional health, especially given the tumult of the last 4 years? Anyone want to jump in? Deb?
I think it's really evident that how green space is incredibly important. The pandemic highlighted it, but I really think the foundation was always there. And I could go into the Trust for Public Land study or various national studies about health and all these things of why it's so critical, or the economic impact of having a park near you and the benefit to, your value, your land, or anything like that. But I think we should just take as an assumption how much park space is really and how we value it. Because I think the hard thing in life is that we sometimes in a triage world where there's all these other priorities, but if we get back to the basics of nature and what's really important and grounding ourselves and being outside and all that is critical. And I'm thinking about how we should just value them. In New York City, for example, less than 1% of New York City's budget goes towards parks. That's not like many other cities, Chicago and others, that value it more. And so I think we really need to kind of sometimes put our money where our mouth is and our resources to have that foundation instead of thinking of other things too.
Yeah, I think, we're working firsthand with kids every single day. We're living in a digital age where there's, phones, iPads, some very entertaining stuff for kids that they can, where they can sit at home and not have to get out. But the importance of play, there's numerous studies of it, and I think the pandemic really did highlight it. Anyone whose parents here will know it would have been a tough time for the kids and for the parents stuck inside. Doing nothing, and for their physical health, for their mental health, getting outside and play, whether it's organized sports with organizations like myself, or just simply running around and playing and, having an escape from sitting down, watching something, or sitting down in a classroom. I think it is of the utmost importance when it comes to a child's development physically and mentally, for sure.
You guys didn't really leave me with much there. Yeah. I think just adding, I think exercise has proven to improve every single biomarker that you can measure, and that's not controversial. And then I think when you marry on sort of the team aspect and the community aspect of organized sports and teams, there's no better melting pot than a team. And for young people to experience teammates with different backgrounds, being sort of I don't want to say non-real life situations, but to experience real life situations through sport and through competition, through victory, through defeat, through adversity, through personal growth and self-awareness. I think, the more spaces we have to let that sort of unfold for our young people, the better off they're going to be and the better off we're going to be.
I'll leave you the microphone. You guys have been involved in some really amazing tangible projects. Constitution Park, Turtle Park, Hommocks, the incredible new play space at Hommocks. Can you talk a little bit about the tangible sort of reactions that you've seen from kids from the community to the work that you've done? As somebody whose kids went through Hommocks, I feel like that play space is like nothing short of a miracle.
Right.
That you were able to make that happen.
So, yeah, so first of all, thanks to Homix and the school district. Very easy partners, found out that we had this idea, and we're unbelievable partners to help let that happen. You can't get anything done here without the approvals of either a town or a village or a school district or a rec community, so they're great to work with. I think the response, so I would just say, number one, the day that we opened the park, and a lot of the high school kids came through, some of the board members were there, and we were taking some pictures, and scrolling through pictures at our board meeting a couple days later, all the kids were engaged, they were interacting with the equipment that we had put in, but it was very hard to find a kid that was on a phone. And I think that's what spaces that we're talking about are meant to do. And then the reactions, there were, I would say, somewhat, bifurcated. First of all, people were grateful, and I can't believe how great this is, and the kids are going to love it. And on the other hand, the reactions were, how is it that this was an asphalt parking lot that abuts a middle school for 30 years, and what else can we be doing with spaces like this?
Yeah.
So I think, that was sort of
Could you talk a little bit, I'll come back to you in a second, but if you could talk a little bit, you represent sort of different constituencies, and obviously the people who use Constitution Park, there tends to be older adults, people who desperately need this outdoor space for calmer sort of reasons, as well as younger families who use the playgrounds. Can you talk a little bit about the reaction from the community?
Sure. So I think that is really important to have a balance of what you use your parks for. There's passive recreational space where people really need it to unwind or sit at a bench or just frankly walk. And Constitution in some ways gives that. It's also a great community hub because you have that pavilion, and whether it's like dance or music or free yoga, it gives that opportunity, and it's just a really pretty place when we have festivals and things like that. When we were working very closely with the village, there was discussion about should there even be that back play space that's like a little bit like a woodland playground. It's a smaller one, and really people went back and forth, and there was a lot of community input about whether it should exist or not. It ended up being kind of like tucked away so that like the littles could go and have fun over there, but then adults could use the main space, and so that was a really thought out process. Whereas Turtle, I almost feel like it's like a mini Disneyland because there's so many people there. I live right down the street from Turtle Park, and so people really, really enjoy it. The kids love it. It's a great place for little kids. So yeah, I think there definitely has to be a balance in parks for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, as we've discussed, team sports can be especially helpful to economically disadvantaged and at-risk youth. And we do have a very diverse community with people from different backgrounds. Ben, you, as we've been talking about, have spent quite a bit of time in particular making sure that everyone who wants to play soccer can. Can you talk a little bit about that outreach to make the sport so inclusive and what kind of results you've seen?
So, as part of my role as with LMFC, we believe strongly, sport could be the great equalizer, and sport should be for everyone. And as I discussed earlier, the real importance of exercise, and I think team sports on a social side as well is very important. So we've reached out to and connected a lot with the Mamaroneck Avenue School, the social worker, Dina Reynoso in particular, and the principal, Miss Sandrima, and we now go in the fall, and we're doing it again in the spring. We go in 3 times a week during the lunchtime. Number one, we actually have former students go in there that now coach with LMFC. They used to go to Mamaroneck Avenue School. They love giving back, seeing their old teachers, and then working with the young kids there on soccer, which is it's a huge sport at Mamaroneck Avenue School. They all love it, they all want to emulate Messi and everything. And so we're trying to we're trying to encourage them to play. We give them a little bit of structure, which makes it a little bit more enjoyable for them, because so many of the kids want to play. There needs to be a little bit of structure. And from there, we we want to encourage them to want to come and play more soccer, but we also look at the certain kids going, wow, that kid's a really good player, that kid's really into it. And if we've never seen them down at the soccer club, we'll go and speak to the social worker, will reach out to the family, and we'll try and break down any barriers there are to participate in soccer. We do in-person registrations because, you know, a lot of them are not English speaking, so the actual, you know, even the registration part is hard. We give around $75,000 of scholarships away to make sure that everyone can play. We believe strongly, whether it's recreationally or whether it's competitive travel sports, that all kids have the right to play, and we live in such a great community with generosity, so it's not a problem that we can raise the funds to make sure everyone can play. And we've had some real great success stories from that, you know, kids from slightly troubled backgrounds with single parent families that have struggled a little bit in school, and soccer's really given them that little escape. You know, we've had examples of kids going off to college, now playing D1 college, and they're getting a really good education thanks to organized sports. And so, yeah.
It's amazing. We are, all that said, a smallish community, and the spaces that we have are not infinite. Todd, can you sort of jump off of that and sort of give us a little bit of the landscape of roughly how many kids, if we know that number, participating in sports in this town? If we're going to talk a little bit about the athletic fields for a little bit. And what are the sports that are really you know, most popular among the kids and using the fields right now?
Sure. So through the public schools, so Homix Middle School last year had 900 kids try out for a sport. Not all of them made it, but there were 900 kids that tried out. And then the high school had 1,800 kids try out for a sport. So that's middle school up. The Mamaroneck Youth Football League, which I have been a part of, we have roughly 700 kids that play football in the fall, and then about another 450 that play in the spring. I don't know the exact number, but the Mamaroneck Little League organization is the second or third largest Little League organization in the country. Most people who know me know I'm not a baseball guy, but I'm all for kids being on fields, and I found that to be surprising. Your programs are.
We're the biggest soccer club in Westchester, for sure, yeah.
So north of 1,000 kids?
Yes.
And then, I don't have the exact number for the LMYL, Larchmont Mamaroneck Youth League, and so those are really the field sports that we're trying to add resources to. But when you think about our small community, that's a lot of kids. And so when you say, well, why do we need to improve the fields, or why does this field need to go from grass to turf? When you think about the traffic between the middle school, the high school, plus all of the youth sports that are in elementary school, I mean, we have a capacity issue. And, you know, for some of the sports, jumping on the road to drive to Rye Country Day to go to practice, or other communities to go to practice where they have turf facilities, it doesn't make a lot of sense when you have the footprint here if it's just sort of improved and modernized a little bit.
I would just add, I would imagine during the pandemic, because we had so many young families, has that increased foot traffic at your playgrounds that you guys have helped develop? Has that increased demand as well in that area?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are sort of the biggest challenges then to making the most of the properties that we have? Is it, you know, does the weather play an effect? Does the increasing rain and climate change and these crazy storms that we've been seeing, does that make the land less usable, or sort of what challenges kind of, I'd like to talk to all you guys about that.
Sure. There's definitely resiliency concerns and sustainability concerns, and the weather has been unpredictable and changing, and it absolutely affects play. Like on Randall's Island, we have 60 fields, so when we have 12 synthetic of the 60 currently, and so we have to close down fields quickly, and it's really hard because so many people are losing their permits. And a synthetic field, while in some ways some are concerned about it undoubtedly gets thousands more playing hours and gets more people outside. So it's really a balancing. On the other side, with like Friends of Legend Parks, and we're really looking at also sustainability and using natives and ways to be resilient. I think flooding is a really, really important thing, because no matter where you put your field or where you have your park, if it floods, you can't use it. So these are all things like we really need to look at the base layer of things and then build up. I think we need to invest in our parks, and we also need to maintain our parks, because one thing I've found time and time again is that it's very sexy to do a big capital project. It's less sexy to pick up the garbage, to make sure that things are fixed and all that. So I think there always has to be a plan in place, and I think we do it a lot of the times, but we should be always thinking with that kind of train of thought.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you guys that question next, before we talked about the projects that you're working on to expand capacity. Is exactly how you think about that equation, right? The space is finite, funds are finite. How you balance environmental concerns, maintenance concerns, sustainability, safety, accessibility is an area that we haven't touched on yet. When not everybody agrees on what that cost-benefit analysis should look like when it comes to turf versus grass or whatever be the issue. Todd, would you mind addressing that?
Look, I recognize that we all have to be, good stewards of our environment, but at the same time, we also have to be good stewards of our humans that are in our care. I'm not a scientist. I suspect there are benefits or environmental benefits to natural turf versus artificial turf. But I feel like over the last 30 or 40 years, we've cleared a lot of those hurdles. I have a son that's played varsity football for 2 years. He's never played a game on natural grass. He's been a varsity lacrosse athlete for 2 years. He's never played a lacrosse game on natural grass. My daughter plays soccer. I know, Greta, when was the last time you played a game on natural grass? So I feel like, and again, I'm not up to date on the most recent studies on turf versus artificial turf versus natural turf. Environmental benefits, but what I will say is I feel like over the last 30 or 40 years, we've cleared those hurdles. And in places where there are tremendous resources, like our Rye Country Day, turf, Ursuline School, turf, Sacred Heart in Greenwich, turf, and grass, because it's on a farm, and they have the space for it. But I feel like we've cleared a lot of these hurdles. And so when I'm looking at the sort of cost-benefit analysis, environment versus play space versus health of young people, I mean, our young people are transient. They're only in our care for a short amount of time, and then they're going to move on. So they really don't have a say in this fight. So it's up to us, old folks who are going to be around forever, to try and give these guys this sort of, the best canvas possible for them to have space to be physical and active until the next group moves through. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's sort of my 4 cents.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit on the challenges of the space we have here. This is suburban, but it's a pretty urban suburban area. So lots of people here, and I'm not sure if it was the pandemic that got parents wanting their kids out playing more. Not sure if it was the pandemic where older families moved out, younger families moved in. But we have an issue with the number of kids that are wanting to enroll in the different sports. We just heard that Little League's the biggest league one of the biggest leagues in the country. Our soccer club's one of the biggest, and I've not even spoken about Larchmont Junior Soccer League, which is it's a separate, because we can't combine them because there's so many kids. The enrollment, I believe if you live in this community, you pay your taxes, you pay your rent, you have the right for your children to play their chosen sport. Not necessarily the travel sport, but at least recreationally. And we're running into issues where. I know it happens in Larchmont Junior Soccer League where they just are maxed out in terms of field space, and so kids get turned away. And we do our very utmost to make sure every kid gets to play, but it's reaching a point because there is a finite amount of space for kids to play. And with LMFC, we use Harbour Island a lot, and the Village of Mamaroneck Recreation Department are very, very generous with how much they let us use it. We're on there 7 days a week, spring and fall, and we always, we have a little butt heads a couple of times when they close the fields after a bit of rain. but their obvious answer back with, this is natural grass. You've got on there over 200 kids, at a time when we would do our practices, and then another practice comes on, there's over another 200 kids. If we just play there during all conditions, the field's just going to get absolutely destroyed. So we're running into that issue, and then what's happening is, there's other clubs around, there's these for-profit clubs and all that stuff, and kids are often, we're starting to see more and more kids move away, and I like to chat with parents, why are you moving, what is it? And fields is always at the top of the list that we don't have. Harbour Island's a fantastic space, but it can only be kept in certain good condition, and they want their kids playing on better surfaces. So, kids kind of, I wouldn't say forced, but feeling like they need to move away from what is their community to go have their kids play some, good quality sports.
Ben and I were talking. My daughter went through his soccer program, and I remember so many Sundays being washed out because of rain and field closures and the disappointment there. I'd like you guys have been hinting at a little bit. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about some of the projects that you have coming up that you are looking to raise funds for and mobilize in the community.
Sure. So currently, Friends of Larchmont Parks is working on Willow Park, which is a smaller park near the waterfront. We're finishing up that project right now. We put in, with the help of some donors, a new basketball court, if you're familiar with Willow down there, as well as a new fence, which was much needed against the waterfront, and new playground elements. So that is currently what we have working on. We're also working on smaller projects like putting natives into cane or redoing flowers in Addison Park. As you know, we already did Constitution, and I think after that we'll be looking for our next project. What we like to do is really work with the village to kind of sprinkle around the different things we're working on. So, yeah.
Great. Todd?
So for those who don't know, the first iteration of Fields for Kids was responsible for Memorial Field at Mamaroneck High School, which is the best facility in town, and I don't think sees a minute of freedom in a given day. They also did the baseball park at Lorenzen Field. We completed the Homics play space, which we. Oh my goodness. Okay. I put everybody to sleep. We just completed the Hops play space behind Homics Middle School. Next is going to be the returf, and we're going to lengthen the field just a touch to make it standard. Alma Field at Flint Park. We're just topping out fundraising there and hope to have that groundbreaking in the summertime. And then somewhat quickly, Town Center became an active project. The school has been great once again. We engaged them, and so Town Center is going to be next as well, with the potential of shovels going in the ground there also sometime this summer. And then finally, we've started some conversations with the village of Mamaroneck and Harbour Island, and what's the potential there for improving that space and potentially turfing some space there.
Ashad, you guys are obviously volunteer-run organizations, so I would imagine you're probably looking for volunteers and help and input along the way.
Yes, absolutely. So if anyone's interested in working with Friends of Larchmont Parks, please, say hi after the meeting, or if you know someone, that would be really great. I work closely with Laura Rosenthal, who's my co-chair, and we have a bunch of really nice people. So if you're interested in that, just let me know.
And I would also add that you work, so you guys advise and consult and help fundraise, but at the end of the day, it's the municipal leaders that have the final say on the public land, whether it, whatever the jurisdiction or the school district or whatever. Is there a role for volunteers to pitch in or to help with you guys as well?
I would say for us, given that we've got 2 projects that we want to get shovels on the ground for this summer, our number one priority right now is fundraising. and I feel like that's going to be the #1 priority for a long time. Yes, and volunteers, specifically there, as you mentioned, anybody who can help us sort of manage the matrix of territories and jurisdictions between rec groups and villages and towns and school districts and seemingly everyone else who seems to have a stake in the things that we do. Someone with expertise in those areas would be someone we'd really want to have a conversation with. But fundraising is critical right now.
Well, you can hold on to
Sure.
the mic. Before, we're going to open it up to questions in just a second. But before we wrapped up this part of the program, I know each of you guys have stories to tell from our conversations. I'd love for each of you to share your earliest, most memorable experience with outdoor play growing up, where you grew up, and sort of how you got into this cause and why that was important to you.
Wow. So I grew up in a town called Huntington Beach in Southern California. As you may have guessed, I was a bigger kid. And in today's nomenclature, in elementary school was probably a bully. Dad was a firefighter, mother was a teacher, so somewhat middle class, blue collar sort of upbringing. I was doing okay in school, and then my dad came on with a flyer for junior All-American football when I was probably, 9 or 10 years old. And so football for me became a vehicle that probably changed the course of my life. I think the last time I was in a fist fight was in 7th grade. So it calmed me down, it gave me some focus. I became a pretty good student. Ultimately, I earned a scholarship to play football at Notre Dame, which graduated. I was the first person from my family to graduate from college. I have 2 younger brothers who now have also graduated from college. And ended up in the NFL for a couple of years. Now, the point of the story is that I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't had that athletic sort of outlet or somebody hadn't pointed me in that direction. And so we always had plenty of space and plenty of kids, or plenty of spaces and coaches growing up. And that became a vehicle for me, like I said, to sort of change the course of my life. And I'm not saying that an extra turf field at Town Center is going to create a Division I football player or lacrosse player or whatever, but what I am going to say is that that team or that experience or that exercise might calm somebody down at night to study maybe 15 minutes longer, or it might help somebody get to SUNY Purchase who maybe wasn't going to go to college, or it might help somebody, if you're on a team, maybe understand somebody else on your team who has a different background or different upbringing than you. Sort of a long-winded way of saying that. I think sports sort of changed the trajectory of my life.
So yeah, you can probably tell by the way I talk, I didn't grow up in this country. I grew up in a very small town called Southwell in Nottinghamshire in England, right in the middle of England, a lot more rural than this. And, I was very lucky that we had loads of outdoor space. We had too much of it. We could go and do whatever, and it was. Growing up, school wasn't my thing. I didn't really much enjoy, but sports was. Sports was my life growing up, and it's ended up being my, profession growing up, and it's absolutely changed my life. And I had 3 brothers. That was what I used to look forward to after school. During recess, playing school soccer with friends. And it ended up where I am now, and I love where I live, I love what I do, and sports has changed my life. And I see it happen with kids today. I mentioned a boy, I'll mention his name. There's a boy called Milton who went to the high school. Some of you that go to school will probably remember him because he was a bit of a superstar in high school. But growing up, I worked with him. He was a handful and everything. He was from a slightly different background to many of the kids that he went to school with, but he's now, soccer 100% got him into college because everyone realized how it could, and that made him work harder so that he could play soccer in at school, academically, and now he's actually just transferred to a D1 school, and he's really, really excelling, and it's great to see. So sports and it really does just change lives. It changed mine, and it's changing kids here.
Okay, so Todd and I have something in common. I was the first to go to college for my family, too. My parents were both from the Bronx, and they moved me up to Yorktown Heights and with my sister. So I lived in northern Westchester with my family. I walked to practice at the middle school and the high school for field hockey and lacrosse, and that was a big part of my life growing up. But then there was also the other side of it where I would just, when I was smaller, would go to the park to play on the elementary school playground, and that's where me and my sister hung out all the time, and, you know, we made games and up in our head and all that kind of things. We had a really good time there. So, I mean, it was always part of my life. I was really, looking back, in some ways blessed to be so close to so much green space, and, you know, here we're limited. In the city, it's even more limited, you can imagine, and so it's really like a tremendous value.
Amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. I would love to open it up to any questions in the audience.
I prefer to pass this one because it's connected to the, so
Oh, okay.
walk around to people and pass it around.
This microphone.
See if you can,
We can certainly give that a shot.
yeah,
Emphasize to everyone that our
yeah.
meetings are 1 hour.
Come through here, pick this up, yeah. And then there's an extension cord, I think it'll go to everybody. This way it's connected to the camera.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
That our meetings are 1 hour long, and we're not a decision-making body. So unlike municipal meetings or school board meetings, we would appreciate questions as opposed to statements. So any questions anyone has, I want to welcome all of this, or Joe Liberti's Okra students here. So thank you all for coming, as well as everybody else, and thank you all. So are there any questions, anything you want to learn more about?
Yes.
Yes.
This is for Todd Norman. Todd, most of the things that you mentioned were about fields that already exist. Is any part of your program or your goal have to do anything with building facilities in the area, sports facilities? And if so, maybe you'd like to share what you're thinking.
Currently, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm the microphone runner.
Currently, we do not have designs on building any new infrastructure. Our focus is around improving the existing field space that is within Larchmont and Mamaroneck. That's actually an interesting question. I'm not sure if somebody came to us, I'm sure we would have a conversation, but I'm not sure how it fits with our current mandate.
Anyone?
I'm going to get my steps in. Was there a question over here?
So we're Mamaroneck High School students, and we have a question about like Getz and Harbor Field, because there's like a lot of flooding there. Is there like any like, you know, like way you guys are thinking about like fixing that, or like any solve to that problem and improvements to the field?
We'll figure out another way to do this with the question.
I would say that, you know, any projects at Harbor Island are in the very early stages, but those are flooding is definitely an issue that will have to be addressed. I mean, it makes no sense to pour potentially millions of dollars into a play space that was constantly being flooded to have it now be flooded again. So I suspect that drainage and those flooding issues will have to be addressed before we commit dollars to projects like that.
I saw a question. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm going to alternate.
A quick comment and a question. I became familiar with two young girls from Guatemala who came here and at a very early age were kind of lost, and they found soccer And through soccer, their lives turned around, and now they're very successful young women. My question is, you look like a lineman to me. I'm asking, I assume you're a lineman, what teams did you play for, and did you participate in a Super Bowl?
And will you be giving us autographs after the meeting?
I spent a season with the Chicago Bears in 1994, and then an off-season training camp with the Falcons in 95, and then I moved on to Seattle for 95 season, and then training camp in 96, and then that was the end of it for me. No Super Bowls. I'm in a couple of team pictures. As you notice, I had very short stays in a lot of places, which wasn't very good.
Thank you.
I'm with the Larchmont Environmental Committee, and there are a lot of studies coming out about the problems with artificial turf. There are more every day about PFAS chemicals. The EPA, as usual, is way behind on this. Artificial turfs is also known that it doesn't absorb water like real grass does. It only drains the water if built properly. And so all that water that is currently being soaking in our fields and not making them usable also is water that's not being pushed into the community in other ways. So we, as a committee, are very concerned about taking our green spaces and turning them into open spaces. Because once you put an artificial turf in, it's not green anymore. It doesn't sustain life. It's a methane-producing surface. It's a heat island. I brought along the stuff that currently is coming off of Alma Fields that is just brushed off and put on kids. Mount Sinai doesn't recommend small children be around this stuff because of their vulnerability to the toxic chemicals found in artificial turf, even the new versions of artificial turf. I'm sure there's some ways that you guys could mitigate that. I get it. We don't have enough playing field space. We as a committee have offered in the past to help research real grass turf. There are companies out there now who claim that they can get as much hours of playing fields on non-lighted fields as you can get from artificial turf. So we just want to offer that as our interest. Not really questions, sorry.
Yeah, so there was and I was away when this happened, but I believe we had Fields for Kids had some conversations with a group that wanted to discuss sustainability, and I believe that specifically there was a product that's used in Europe, and I don't want to say Northern Europe, but maybe Western Europe, and so we've looked at some of these. We've not completely ignored that part of the conversation because there's a trade-off in all of this. And for us, with the mandate of improving fields for local kids as they come to the community, it may not be the most sustainable product in the world, but we think that the trade-off is it's better for the kids. Specific to that product that we looked at, it was sort of a hybrid product, but I believe predominantly natural turf. Not a great fit for this part of the world, given the rains that we have, given our proximity to salt water, and it doesn't hold up from a durability standpoint to where we need the fields to be. In other words, we're going to be fighting some of the same issues that we fight currently with within the natural turf fields that just don't hold up in rain or get shut down. So, look, it's it's a trade-off. I get it. We all, like I said, at the outset, we all want to be good stewards of the environment, and we want to be good stewards of our humans for the years that we can be stewards for them. And I think that as the products have progressed through time over the decades, they've gotten better, they've gotten more environmentally friendly, or hopefully have mitigated some of those concerns. And I would just say that the sample that you brought, I mean, one of the reasons why you redo Alma Field is simply there. I mean, that's a 12-year-old product, and those beans are meant to it's a maintenance product for the field, but when the field wasn't maintained properly over the years, and so you have to do more stopgap maintenance with products like that nobody thinks is great. But hopefully, I can assure you the next field there will be better than that field.
Yeah, I'll talk briefly on that. It is an issue, and I don't believe in just turfing every bit of green space we've got here at all. But as Todd said, I do think we need to find a balance because, you know, kids' physical health, kids' mental health is important. If without Alma, for example, I don't know if anyone remembers what it was like last fall, but every single Saturday, every single Sunday, it poured. And without that turf field, those kids in Larchmont wouldn't have had a chance to play. I was out there coaching in the rain. It's not ideal, but it's better than not playing. So, and without that turf field, we just would not have played. I know at Mamaroneck High School, we've been doing some winter practices over there. That sample you've got there, I've read it as well. It is an issue for sure. They've just somehow, I don't know how they did it, but they've removed all that and they've put a different infill that is supposed to be more sustainable, that is supposed to be safer. And my hope is that technology helps in making this more sustainable and less likely to affect children and everything like that. But I definitely understand there needs to be a balance with this.
Hold on, Deb. Real quick.
Wait. Well, it's all right. It's all right. You can go, and I'll just do whatever you say. I'll jump in from there. You can. Oh. Okay. All right. So just to add on that, like I definitely think it's a balance because you really need those playable hours, and it's really important to get outside. If you have fields that nobody can use because they're mud, what's the point? Alma, I think to say is tired is an understatement. It is super tired. 12 years, what's on Alma should not be the seams. Like when I look at it, that it really has to go, and I know everyone's working on it. That's not to point fingers, that's just a fact. They're tired. And from what I've done on Randall's Island with having 12 fields, there is more sustainable products. They're not green, right? They're not. But there's coconut husk and there's sand and there's like infield that's not chrome rubber that we've seen, 15 years ago, and there's better product. So I really do think it's a balance of having, your natural areas as well as some that can play in the world that we live in now that has all this flooding and everything like that. So that was my take. And it's a hard balance, but I know you need the mic. Maybe I can.
There you go.
Thank you, Deborah. My question is regarding the other fields near Almux. So Alma field, yes, with all this thing, with this. Now we need to change it. What do we do with all of that? It doesn't disintegrate. It stays in nature. And we are so close to the sound. You talked about our responsibility for the kids. Mm-hmm. The kids are going away, we're staying. Mm-hmm. What about all the plastic that goes to the sound? It's not only our kids. I mean, we are all breathing it. It's part of our life, but what about all the micro life in the water? Aren't we also responsible for that? Are we always going to say, oh, our kids, yes, first. They need more, so that we can compete, so that they are more balanced. I'm a yoga and mindfulness teacher. I give my time for kids so that they can be more balanced. But also, our responsibility with the environment. We are so close to water. So my question is about the two other fields that are in hummocks, the natural fields. So there is Alma and there are the two.
The fields behind hummocks? Are those
What's the future for that? Artificial or natural? Are they going to stay natural?
So that is a town of Mamaroneck property. That's not school property. And so I believe the proposal from the town when we engaged them was for a grass field, a turf field, and potentially a space for an outdoor ice rink. Right now, I would say that the conversations between Fields for Kids and the town of Mamaroneck are in a holding pattern. And so that was the last iteration of that space. But I suspect that that won't be moving forward with any urgency in the near term.
Yep, I was just going to say, unless it sounds like there's a lot of conversation still to be had, and I really appreciate so much our speakers joining us today to lend us their expertise and to engage in that conversation. Deborah Maher, Ben Foster, and Todd Norman, we really appreciate all the work you're doing for the community and all the hard conversations that you're having. So thank you. And with that.
I too want to thank our speakers and thank Claudine and also thank all the Ochre kids that have come this morning. I hope all of this has been helpful to you to understand what's going on and the various issues relating to all these issues as well. Thank you all for coming. Next month, April 9th, we will hear from our superintendent. Oh, April 16th, we changed it, sorry. April 16th, thank you. April 16th, we will hear from our superintendents on the state of our schools, both in Mamaroneck and in Rhinebeck. Thank you all for coming and hope to see you next month. Thank you.